is not distinct when it comes to sex. Everyone goes through an emotional trauma, regardless of your sex, whether you're a male or you're a female. So it's really timely, and I think checking in, like Oliver said, and Adashi as well, is very important. We need to check our mental health. And most times, if you're at work and you find out that you're not productive any longer, you're stressed, you know what we call, what we call here in our local palace, the brain jam. Okay, you might need some time off to really cool off.
Take breaks.
Yeah.
People underestimate the importance of going on leave.
Don't be
Everybody
afraid
just
to be
wants to
vulnerable as well.
work. Don't monetize your leave. Go on leave. Sit down at home, wake up, eat, sleep. Check in with your mental health. It could be therapy. It could be just sitting still and doing nothing. Whatever helps. Even if it's just going to the spa. There's several ways. We hope
there's several ways.
We can explore this conversation further. Thank you so much, Dashi.
Thank you so much, Olive and Joe. Have a nice time on your show.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to look forward to a lot of that conversation later on when we talk to some professionals who will be coming in here to tell us about our mental health and what you need to do. Plus, we have a lot in store for you here on Breakfast Central. Let's go for a quick break. When we come back, we'll bring it to you more.
Section of news on the continent, engaging in analytical reports. Resident doctors in Nigeria commenced a 5-day warning strike. Queues have hit the major cities in Nigeria, bringing you authentic stories as they happen. I am Adeshewa Olusoga. This is News Central.
It's not just news to us. It's our voice and our story. It's our report. How we tell African stories for Africans. With detailed, timely and authentic reports. News Central is your home for true news and African stories. I am Omolola Ololade. This is News Central.
News Central TV, Africa's #1 storyteller, has come with the best of both worlds. With a combination of news app and live TV, we ensure that you keep track of the latest headlines, breaking news, and in-depth analysis from professional journalists from around the continent. Download the News Central TV app on Android and iOS and get started today. Don't forget to follow us on News Central's social media platforms. News Central, Africa First.
Africa is rising. Again, we hear our sounds echo on the other side. Afrobeat and Afropop reinvented, hip life brought back to life, new energy infused into Kwaito and Kwela. Africa is balling. Every stroke, every shot, every race, we find our place at the top. Taking the helm of real power, new hopes for democracies. A breed of entrepreneurial tigers, audacious storytellers, and a promising generation raring to go. Truly, Africa is rising. And this is where the stories that define our continent live.
Welcome back. You're watching Breakfast Central. Experts say that good mental health is vital to the overall well-being of individuals. Yet, 1 in 8 people globally are believed to be living with one form of mental health condition or the other, which can impact negatively on their physical health, their well-being, how they connect with others, as well as their livelihoods. Now, this is even more worrisome with the rate at which such conditions are affecting an increasing number of adolescents and young people.
Well, this year's theme, mental health, is a universal human right. The WHO is calling on member states and partners to celebrate efforts in mental health in a human rights-based approach. This morning, we're joined by Joseph Oike. He is the Director General, Kaduna State Bureau for Substance Abuse, Prevention and Treatment. Thank you so much for being here, Joseph.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
All right, let's start off first with the theme for this year. Taking a look at our minds, our rights, and how it keys into the situation of things that's got to do with Africa, Nigerians as a whole, with mental health.
Yeah, so this year's theme of mental health as a universal right focuses on something that the WHO and I think the entire health community and mental health advocates have been talking about for a long time, which is that we need to end this dichotomy between mental and physical health. If you think about it, we tend to think about health from here up as being somewhat different from health from here down. And we're saying that if health is a universal basic right, then that includes every form of health from here all the way down. Mental health is just as much a universal basic right as physical health is. In fact, we should stop looking at physical health as being somehow different and disconnected or even less important than physical health, because we understand that mental health is just as significant. In fact, the body is one whole. So where there is an unwellness in one part of the body, it affects the entire body, and that includes mental health conditions.
All right, we'd like you to give us sort of a realistic picture of where we are as a country when it comes to conversations of concerning mental health. So where is Nigeria in the global conversation of mental health?
Well, as you can imagine, Nigeria is a developing country. And with developing countries, there are challenges when it comes to the health sector. There are also challenges, particularly when it comes to mental health, because this is an area that people don't really understand as well. There's a lot of social, cultural stigma around mental health. It's spiritual in origin. What actually causes it? Is it infectious? So for this reason, we don't really talk as much about mental health as we should in public spaces. Mental health is not readily available as much as it should. I mean, when you think about it, almost every state in Nigeria has maybe one large psychiatric hospital where people with mental health problems are shifted off to and locked away and managed there, almost like, back in the day when we used to have colonies for people who have leprosy, where we just send them away somewhere far away and try and pretend like they're not really part of our community. A lot of that is changing globally, and there's a drive to change that as well in Nigeria. So, for example, in Kaduna here, one of the things that the government of Kaduna, the Kaduna State government, is doing is to integrate mental health services at the primary health care level. What that means is you don't really need to wait till the case gets so bad that you need to send someone away before people can access services for mental health. And if you think about it, this is also part of this year's push with the World Mental Health Day. Accessibility at the community level for mental health issues. We believe that when people get to experience mental health issues being treated in their communities, people get mentally unwell and mentally stable in their communities, it would have a direct impact on the stigma, because you get to see that someone can get ill and get well. The same way they have malaria, they get ill and they get well. So the situation in Nigeria is that things are moving slowly. It is a developing country after all. We need to do a lot more when it comes to accessibility to mental health services, particularly at the community level.
All right. I think it's important to mention, I'm really glad that Kaduna State government is doing that, incorporating it into primary health care. I think that another suggestion would be that we start to see it. I don't know if you can share with us if the insurance plans also cover mental health. And you've also shared with us some of the stigma. Let's talk about, we'll come back to some of the stigma, we'll go in depth into that. But I would like us to talk about, some of the ways in which we can make mental health accessible, mental health services. One is what Kaduna State government is doing, and I'm hoping that the rest of the country can pick up with that. Talk to us about the availability of mental health services under insurance health schemes, and what other ways can we incorporate mental health and make it accessible to the common man?
You're absolutely right. Mental health schemes should be available on all insurance health schemes. And again, if you think about it, health is health. We really need to end this dichotomy between mental and physical health. Health is health. And so if you have a health insurance coverage, it should cover every aspect of your body. Yes, some may argue that insurance premiums are higher on chronic illnesses, as less so when they're dealing with non-chronic illnesses. We can have those arguments at a later time. The important thing is that all health insurance schemes should cover mental health services. And yes, that makes it a lot more accessible for people in general. Having it available at the community and at the secondary level is also something that would really, really help out when it comes to access to mental health services. Presently, one of the things that we need to keep in mind is that most of the neuropsychiatric hospitals that are available are federal. These are tertiary referral sites, so they're like teaching hospitals. They're like federal teaching hospitals. What that means is, if you think about a state where there's a federal institution, that federal institution typically doesn't cater only to that state. It caters to states around it. And so if you think about availability, so let me use Kaduna, for example. We have a federal neuropsychiatric hospital here in Kaduna, an excellent hospital for managing issues of mental illness. But this hospital, or rather that hospital, caters to an 8 as you can imagine, the health center will be overwhelmed, bed space availability and all of that would be a problem. So one of the other things we need to do is to decentralize mental health services and ensure that at every level of the healthcare system, the primary, the secondary, the tertiary, there are options that are affordable and accessible to the general population.
That's a whole lot in breaking it down. But Let's also look at what's really common. I think let's break it down a bit. Some far north areas or northern areas, you do have people who, once in a while, because of getting depressed because of the situation around them, they engage in drugs and so on. I want us to look at drugs and its impact on mental health, especially being a mental health day. What has been the recent research, especially from your end, and how has this impacted a lot, especially on youths?
Well, there's no doubt that there's a strong association between drug use and mental illness. And I say association because oftentimes we mistakenly say that drug use or drug abuse causes mental illness. That hasn't really been proven to be the case. What we rather know is that in some instances, when people have a mental health condition, they're more likely to use drugs. And unfortunately, when they use drugs, it also makes their mental health condition a lot worse. It seems to be like a vicious cycle where these two things are connected. But this is not unusual because both conditions affect the same organ that is ill, which is the brain. Now, when we think about the fact that about 1 in 4 people have some sort of mood or anxiety disorder, it's a very common thing. And you think about what kinds of skills, particularly young people have to cope with maybe an anxiety disorder or a mood disorder, you would understand that this leaves such populations vulnerable to unhealthy coping styles. So I'll give you an example where a young man feels anxiety to socialize. He doesn't really know how to talk to people, make friends, and things like that. Um, and then someone gives him something and says, here, take, this will give you courage, this will give you confidence, this will make you a bit more open to making friends and things like that. And so he takes the drugs and he finds that this is in fact true. I feel a lot more confident, I feel a lot more this. But over time, they become dependent on that, socialized, so to speak. And in the absence of the drugs, the anxiety is a lot worse. So they have to keep taking unto a point where their brain becomes dependent on this substance. So it is not necessarily a one causes the other situation. We know these two issues are closely related. And so part of any comprehensive mental health strategy must include strategies that address drug abuse in a preventive way. And what that means is prevention science for drug abuse is a whole new field. There's evidence about what works and what doesn't work. We need to start to look at, again, I keep stressing, the whole person. When we talk about the numbers in Nigeria, in 2018, the UNODC organized the country survey on drug abuse and found that close to about 15% of people in Nigeria have used drugs at one point or used drugs in the year before. That's a 15% prevalence rate. You think about it, you say, well, 15% is not that much. It doesn't count for it. When you think about the fact that the global prevalence is 5%, it means that Nigeria is at about 3 times the global prevalence. You mentioned something about the North, and that same survey showed that, in fact, the title or the award for high substance abuse would actually go to the Southwest and South, less so the North. This doesn't mean the numbers aren't high in the North. Here in Kaduna, it's about 10%. That is still two times the global average. That's a rather high number. But the point is, it is not, these issues are not localized to any particular part of the country. However, the particular substances being used, the nature of use, and what some of the social cultural drivers in each of the areas of the country are remarkably different.
All right. There's a demographic there. I mean, we've touched on them. Adolescents, young people. I recently had a conversation with a mental health expert who said to me that it's as if we're sitting on a ticking time bomb, because there are a number of young people, even the elite, that are being exposed to hard drugs. What are the telltale signs that parents should look out for when they want to see, when they need to observe their kids who maybe might have been abusing drugs?
In general, what I say to people is when you notice that someone's behavior is changed or is different from what it is that it normally would be, that's a good time to have a conversation with the person. Now, these are two important things. First, their behavior has changed from what it normally would be. This means that you need to be, and I say this to parents all the time, the point at which there is a problem is not when you initiate a relationship with the child. There needs to be a pre-existing relationship that allows you to even be able to effectively identify that there is a problem. So if as a parent, a guardian, a loved one, you have a good relationship with this person, you would notice that things have changed. They're not doing as well as they used to do in school. They are isolating themselves. They seem to have changed their group of friends. They are poor in keeping up with commitments. So this is a kid that when he says, I'll be back at 2, he's back at 2. When he says, I'm going to George's place, and you check, he's at George's place. Now, when he says he'll be back at 2, you don't see him till 4. The excuses don't really make sense. Where he says he's going, he's not really there. These changes in behavior that are not attributable to any other factor may be an indication that it is time to sit down and have an honest conversation about what is really going on. I should also point out that this survey by the UNODC also shows that we may not necessarily be correct if we are saying that this time bomb only affects the adolescent. In Nigeria, we're seeing that this also affects people of working age, people of 35 and above. So yes, we are sitting on a time bomb if nothing is done. It is not a bomb that is localized to just young people. We're looking more at something that affects people of their productive ages, not just in the adolescent stage, even at a time where people should be at work and caring for their families. And we've also noticed that unlike most other places where we would say, okay, this is something that affects boys and it's guys being guys, a lot more women are affected by issues related to drug abuse. Similarly, with mental health. In Nigeria, that number is somewhere between 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 people who use drugs is a woman. So it's generally something that is growing in scope and in size, and it's affecting a lot more of the populations that we need for a healthy, productive community.
Well, I could say that this conversation will not stop here. We'll continue to have this conversation, especially for the whole of today and, of course, the days to follow. Thank you so much, Joseph Oike, Director General, Kaduna State Bureau for Substance Abuse Prevention and Treatment. Thank you for joining us on Breakfast Central.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. Well, away from that, let's go to the big story because it's a big day in Liberia. Yes, Liberians will today vote in the presidential and parliamentary elections as current President George Weah seeks a second 6-year term. Now, there are 15 seats in the Senate and 73 seats in the House of Representatives that are up for grabs, but attention is mostly focused on the presidential poll. Current President George Weah of the Coalition for Democratic Change, CDC, elected in 2017, is contesting against 19 other candidates, including former Vice President Joseph Boakai of the Unity Party.
This will be the country's 4th post-war presidential election, but the first one without the presence of the United Nations mission, which provided support to the country's elections commission. What is the general mood in Liberia this morning? How eager are the voters? We have Professor Adam Kine. He is human rights and youth advocate, and he'll be joining us. Good morning. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
All right. We'd like you to give us a general picture of what the situation is like. Over 2.4 million people we hear who are set to vote today. What is the mood like? Are people enthusiastic? Are they excited to go to the polls? Are there fears maybe for their security? Professor Adam Kine, are you still here with us? All right. Seems that he's been temporarily disconnected. We hope that we can reconnect with. Can
Hello?
you please? Yes, please go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I just got a call. People are so excited. Like I said, as the sun rises here in Liberia, the excitement and exuberance, as you can hear, car hooping horns, and people are getting up at the moment, getting ready with strong anticipation and excitement to make sure that these elections are done. They are very, very much excited as I listen out there and look through the windows. I'm seeing people are getting ready actually to go and vote. That's what really happening in Liberia with excitement.
Well, talking of excitement, I mean, you're also showing that excitement in your appearance this morning, I can tell. And by the way, you look amazing. Let me ask this question. Let me ask quickly. I mean, Joseph Akai is one name that everyone keeps talking about, by the way, especially being, a former vice president to Salif. Most importantly, he's also one that they say has got the experience to take Liberians away from where they currently are. What are his chances, looking at the fact that he's making a comeback and looking strong as an opposition?
Well, at the moment, the playing field here, the political playing field here, the determination is actually will be drawn by the Liberian people. Like I said, everyone is excited about this election, and one cannot predict. I'm not a soothsayer at the moment to predict. I am not in a prophetic frame of mind who have had revelatory experience to also predict who's going to win this election. But one thing I can tell you, among the 20 candidates, there are two competitors in the race, and that is Jose Yimam and the incumbent, of course. So I cannot predict at the moment, because what we have seen over these days relative to the campaign, there were a lot of Liberians that were out for both parties. So all we want to see now is, well, people going out there and vote to, and then we will determine who becomes the president of the Republic of Liberia after these elections.
All right. We hear that this is, of course, the first election without the presence of the United Nations Commission. We'd like you to give us insight as to why this is happening and exactly what impact this may or may not have on the elections.
Yes, I may have heard from you now that there isn't a form of United Nations observer or whatever intervention at the moment, but you can rest assured that there are international communities that are present. Even when I was in Kakata a few days ago, there were deployment of international observers all around the polling station or polling sites. So you can rest assured that we have a lot of international communities that are present. Even ECOWAS are also present, and we have the EU, and we have international folk from the United States of America that are also present. I can assure you that Liberia election is almost like concentrated, and everyone is fixated on making sure that these elections are done without any form of disruption, that there is peace and stability while these elections are going on. So United Nations, like I've heard from you, may not be participating at the moment because, after ailing government, the UN or the UNMIL has pulled out from Liberia, and Liberia has been running its own course. So I think that's one of the situations why we don't have UNMIL here, but we have a lot of international communities, and we have a lot of people who are involved in these elections.
All right. I'd like to also follow up on that question. We're hoping for a peaceful election, but are there concerns, are there security concerns that have been expressed? Also, when we look at an election being declared free, fair, and credible, it's not just the activities of the day that makes it free, fair, and credible. It's the activities and the days leading up onto the main election, the pre-election activities. So, how would you rate the pre-election activities so far? Are the majority of the people of Liberia generally pleased by how the activities building up to today has been run, and are there concerns about people's safety?
Well, like I indicated yesterday on your network, there is prior the election or the campaign has created what I would term as election anxiety that is characterized by some level of fear. The fear as a result of we don't know for sure the certainty of folk acting peacefully or acting disorderly. Because we have watched in recent times, even just 2 days ago, during the campaign here in Liberia, that one of few of the Liberians were actually brutalized in the street, caught on camera. So that also creates election anxieties for people. So what we're looking at is to make sure that these elections just pass by, I think, because the anxiety is too much and is characterized by, again, fear, like I said. So we are hoping and that there will be peace and stability. Last night at 12 o'clock, as I was driving along the street, because I'm very concerned to know how the excitement will be for this morning, we saw the Liberian military being deployed in strategic areas around the street. So I think we are hoping there will be, and I'm sure there will be a peaceful election. What I think we will be more concerned about at the moment is the post-election trauma that may occur based upon who's going to win. So that is what we have to deal with. And I will strongly, as an advocate, appeal to whoever becomes the president that after all is said and done, that there will be a need for strong reconciliation. There will be a strong need for unifying the country, because there's a lot of animosity that has been created as a result of these elections. So we are praying that whoever becomes the president becomes a unifier, that he's no longer going to be the president of a political party, but rather for all of the Liberian people, because that's what Liberia needs at the moment. Because what we have seen over these days, Liberia really needs some level of unity and reconciliation after these elections.
Well, you said that right, because we do understand that a lot of Liberians are still asking for an economic war crimes court, which I mean, George Weah had promised he was going to institute that or set that up, but that hasn't indeed taken place. But let me ask you this real quick, not to preempt your choice, or better still, find your place. There is a discord in the CPP where you had, 4 political parties come together so as to unseat George Weah of the CDC. And then we hear one of the parties has pulled off going into this election today. And what's the likelihood that this would be an easy election, especially with a lot of Liberians who had high hopes of that coalition that was formed? What's the mood like, especially from Liberians, seeing the discord that has taken place?
Well, from my observation and analysis throughout the past elections, I think there's always been a correlation to unseat the incumbent. But at the moment, there is a discourse and separation or divide among the coalition at the moment. So, of course, the ANC takes on what we call CPP at the moment. But I think, like I told you initially, that this race is actually between Joseph Yuman Boakai and George Weah, because we have seen it is glaring. It is all glaring. We can all identify that. However, considering the fact that we have almost 20 candidates in the race at the moment, there is a possibility that we might go for second round, because if nobody pull the 50% plus one, then obviously we will be going for re-election in November. But we are praying, like I told you, I'm praying strongly, and the Liberian people are praying, so that we can just have one round, because just what we've just watched over the given time, the tension and the anxiety that has rooted over the country has been very problematic, creating, again, like I say, election anxiety characterized by fear. So we are hoping that if we can just come and just make this one electoral process just count for the rest of the election, that would be very good. But the possibilities are very slim whether that's going to happen. So at the end of the day, we might go for round 2 in these elections. It has always been that way, but we are praying that the trajectory changes at the moment.
All right. Congratulations to the people of Liberia. There will be a number of first-time voters, a number of young Liberians who were born in peacetime Liberia will be going to the polls today. And we do hope that the best man wins. It seems like it's a battle between Bukai and George Weah, and we hope that indeed the best man does win. Congratulations and all the best. We look forward to having you again, Professor Adam Kai.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right.
All right. Well, away from Liberia now, let's come back to Nigeria and talk about one of the most important topics that many persons are indeed reacting to. Well, as Nigeria continues to battle with increasing economic challenges, experts and stakeholders in the country's business sector have urged for a review of old policies and proper implementation of newly introduced ones. Major investments in the economy, especially SMEs, are set to help build an eventual successful ecosystem.
One of the important aspects that need to be reviewed during policymaking is corruption in governance. Former Minister of Education and Economic Policy expert Dr. Obi Ezekwesili has called for transparency in governance. While speaking to New Central TV, she highlighted the need for proper implementation of policies, which is an antidote for corruption.
We do normally say that the underpinning pillar, or the base on which any set of actions to tackle corruption, to entrench accountability and transparency is that base of an awakening by the citizens that something is wrong. Something is wrong here. There is opaqueness. There is, so much that is unknown. There are things that are strange happening. And there is so much corruption, petty corruption, grand corruption. So the people suddenly say, we're tired. And then here comes a leader who has the moral credentials to say, all right, society, corruption is costing us so much, we have to tackle it. And then that leader becomes the exemplary director of a reorientation of society, a reset of the mind of society, where everybody is saying, we have to tackle corruption. That's the base. And then there are two pillars standing on that base: the preventive pillar and the sanctions pillar. The preventive pillar would be everything you need to do in terms of transparency of public procurement, transparency of the tax administration, transparency of the budget process, business processes reforms, bureaucratic reforms, reform of the Auditor General's role, the Accountant General's role. So all of those kinds of reforms will bring openness to how things are done. We normally say that transparency is an antidote to corruption. All right? So the preventive measures include things like that. It includes things like completely deregulating or liberalizing sectors where there used to be concentration of discretionary powers in the hands of one government official or the other as the leader. So when you do deregulate, you see what happened with NITEL. NITEL was a very corrupt public institution, right? But when we reformed, when we liberalized the telecom sector, what happened? Nobody cares about NITEL, right? Because many more providers introduced competition into that market. Many more providers are providing it. The competition led to more provision and more access, so that reduces corruption. Then on the sanction side, you want to make sure that when people engage in corruption, they can't get away with it. You have to have law and its enforcement. So you act on the basis of the rule of law. You have the agencies that can detect that corruption has happened, can go to the court, prosecute corruption successfully, and the judicial process would lead to a sanction, meaning that the right punishment will be given for corruption. So these two pillars, standing on a pillar of a leader who has mobilized society across public sector, civil society, private sector, all of these things have to work together to entrench a culture of transparency, accountability, and anti-corruption in a society.
Very important there, some of the measures that need to be taken to ensure that we can make this society into one that we're proud of. Hopefully, the current administration can do that. President Bola Tinubu yesterday appointed Feladro Toye and 4 others to his presidential media advisory team. According to a statement by the Special Assistant on Media and Publicity to the President, Ajurin Gelale, Feladro Toye was appointed Senior Special Assistant to the President on National Values and Social Justice.
Well, other appointees are Frederick Nwabufo, Senior Special Assistant to the President on Public Engagement, Linda Akiwe, Senior Special Assistant to the President on Strategic Communications, and will also serve as the Communications Advisor to the President of the ECOWAS Commission. Aliyu Audu, Special Assistant to the President on Public Affairs, Francis Abba, was appointed Personal Assistant to the President for Special Duties.
The President tasked all new appointees who are serving in the Media and Publicity Directorate to uphold the highest standards of decorum and decency in their engagements with all members of the public as they advance the President's determined bid to renew the hope of Nigerians.
All right, so that's in line with renewed hope. However, how have Nigerians reacted to this? Well, it's quite different, comme ci, comme ça, like they would say in French. And the reason is simply because a lot of Nigerians have expressed disappointment at seeing the name of especially one of the candidates, which is Feladuro Toye. The reason is because they said and went ahead to, dig up past videos where the appointee had made mention of ensuring that a complete change and a complete sweep of political parties like PDP and APC is ensured or carried out.
So there are two angles to this conversation, Drew. Now, yes, a number of Nigerians have expressed displeasure that a former presidential aspirant is now working with the current administration, especially because Feladuro Toye was one who has spoken so loudly about morals, values, spoken for young people, and a number of them question his ability to be able to do that under the current administration. They're starting to, I've seen so many reactions, right? And whilst I hear them, on the other hand, there is no way to make an effective change if you do not make yourself an active part of the government. When you can only cause the change from the inside rather than stay outside, right? If today I decide that, I've been saying this for the longest time, that I think that women should get a day off every month for their periods, because as a woman, I understand how it's almost like we're fighting for our lives every month. Our bodies are under so much pressure, and we've seen this happen in other countries. But I can only make these suggestions. It will only remain suggestions. If I want to effect this change, a way to go about it would be maybe to decide to, become a part of the legislature, so I can then make it official that there is a bill for the protection of women, or a bill to allow women take a day off every month for their periods. So at the end of the day, you can only cause this change by being on the inside rather than standing on the outside. That's how I see it.
Well, for some, they've said, if you recall, 2014, heading to 2019, general elections, you did have the likes of Feladuro Toye, who had formed the ANN, the political party looking forward to bring change. There was also what they call the force, the special force himself, Messrs. Kingsley Moghalu, not forgetting to Showore. They all formed what they call the force, and they said the force was aimed to ensure that they take away, the current ruling party. So Nigerians are a bit worried on social media that this was one who stood for integrity, who had also mentioned integrity in his speech. He highlighted that word, integrity, and also pointed fingers so strongly at them. But then again, like they say, it's politics. That's what it is. Anyway.
We wish him all the best. We wish them all the best. That's at the end of the day, the way that I see it is, you can't create change from the outside. And everyone is, automatically entitled to their own opinion. Let's go on a very quick break. When we come back, we have some sports update for you.
And thanks for staying with us. Still on Breakfast Central. Let's take a look at sports. Mark Addo has been re-elected to serve as a vice president of the Ghana Football Association for another term. The decision to retain him in this role was reached through unanimous approval from the GFA's Executive Council. Dr. Ransford Abbey nominated Mark Addo for the position, with Frederick Achempong second in the nomination. Following these formalities, the other members of the council unanimously voted in favor of Mark Addo's continued tenure as vice president. This re-election adheres to Article 37, subsection 3 of the GFA Statutes 2019, which stipulates that the Vice President of the Executive Council shall be elected from amongst the members of the Executive Council at its maiden sitting. Now, he shall act in the absence of the President. So, in response to his reappointment, the Vice President, Mark Addo, expressed his gratitude to the Council members and called for their support to carry on the positive work. Like they say, the reward for good work is more work. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Arsenal forward Bukayo Saka is also in the news. Now, he has been ruled out completely of England's games against Australia and Italy because of injury. Saka missed his side's 1-0 Premier League win over champions Manchester City on Sunday with a hamstring injury. The FA confirmed that he has withdrawn after being assessed by England's medical team and would not be replaced in the squad, which now has 25 players. I mean, talking of a strong squad there. England face Australia on 13th of October before taking on Italy in a European Championship qualifier 4 days later. Saka's absence on Sunday ended a run of 87 consecutive Premier League games in which Arteta had played the 22-year-old winger. He has been struggling with his hamstring in recent weeks, limping off during Arsenal's 2-1 Champions League loss at Lens on Tuesday and being withdrawn in last weekend's victory at Bournemouth. So hopefully he gets the needed rest and then gets back to work. Well, let's tell you that Birmingham City have parted company with head coach John Eustace after 15 months in charge. The Championship club are sixth in the table after Friday's 3-1 derby win over West Bromwich Albion. American-owned Blues have been linked with ex-England captain Wayne Rooney, who has just left his role as coach of Major League Soccer side DC United. The club said the appointment of a new manager is imminent and will be encouraged to adopt a no-fear approach. Eustace leaves after 15 months in charge, a period for the club that included 2 failed takeover bids, potential risk of points deductions, and a threat of relegation before new owners Shelby Companies Limited, led by American businessman Tom Wagner, took charge on the 13th of July. Well, there's one video that indeed interests me so much, and I had to repost it on my social media page. It's got to do with a player that I've gotten so used to right now, and I have so much respect for him. That's him there on the field or on the picture there. He is AC Milan player. I'm talking about the one known as Olivier Giroud. Now, AC Milan announced that they are making goalkeeper jerseys available with Giroud's number 9 as customization in commemorating the striker's performance between the sticks in the Rossoneri's victory over Genoa. Now, Milan beat Genoa 1-0 over the weekend thanks to a late Christian Pulisic strike, keeping them atop the Serie A standings. But it was Olivier Giroud who grabbed the headlines. Now, with Pioli having exhausted his maximum allowed substitutions, the France international had to take a place between the sticks when his compatriot Mike Maignan was sent off. Now, in his short period in goal, the striker made one of the most important interventions in the game, a late double save to ensure Pulisic's goal remained the winner. The plaudits flowed in after the game, and he even made the Serie A team of the week, not as a striker, but as a goalkeeper. The club has joined on, they've joined in hyping the performance, as they have now announced that fans can buy goalkeeper jerseys and have Giroud number 9 imprinted on them. So I think that's fantastic. I mean, you need to see as you watch the screen. I mean, I had that video up. I couldn't stop watching it, like back and forth. He did this particular save that was super fantastic. But guess what? I'm sure you get more insights, more time, and get more analysis on this game when you join the sports team at 10 a.m. West African time for In the Game. But that does it for the world of sports. In the meantime, let's bring to you a recap of our top stories so far.
Liberians vote to elect new president. We had Adam Kind join us to talk about this.
Celebrating World Mental Health Day, we did have Joseph Oike who joined us, and we talked deeply. We'll have another conversation on that, by the way.
And in Ghana, Mark Addo has been re-elected as Ghana FAVP.
Interesting story there. Let's see what's coming up next, the second hour here on Breakfast Central.
Lagos court sentences killer cop to death. This is, of course, for the killing that happened in December of 2022.
And of course, a follow-up with the World Mental Health Day, very important. We'll take a look at how you can benefit from it. And then we have the newspaper front pages. Stay with us.
Cross-section of news on the continent, engaging in an analytical report. Resident doctors in Nigeria commenced a 5-day warning strike. Queues have hit the major cities in Nigeria, bringing you authentic stories as they happen. I am Adeshewa Obishoga. This is News Central.
Welcome back to Breakfast Central. Now let's share with you what the big stories making the headlines are. We'll start, of course, with the Guardian newspaper. On the front page of the Guardian newspaper this morning, scarcity of diagnostic services cripples cancer care in southeast states. On page 6, anxiety in Benue as Cameroon sheds excess water from Lagdo Dam. It's not just in Benue that we have this anxiety. We've had a conversation about Lagdo Dam earlier in this year and how, we were not quite sure if they had notified Nigeria when releasing the excess water, because what that means is that there would then be flooding. NIMASA has warned of flooding in certain states in Nigeria. So I don't know if this, would be something to be very worried about. I don't know what the Benue government is doing about this, and if people would be sent to temporary sites or temporary centers or relocated to temporary centers. Shiites PFN differ as Hamas-Israel conflict drags into third day. We have, of course, been following the Israel-Palestine conflict, and that's an update there. Marketers groan, seek subsidized FX as federal government offers 90 import licenses. That's a good story to look at. Probably bring in an expert to talk about, what exactly that means. And final story, policeman to die by hanging for killing Lagos pregnant lawyer. These are the stories we have on The Guardian. Let's move away from The Guardian to the next paper.
All right. Well, let's move away to Daily Trust. That's where we're going to. And Daily Trust has, on the front page there, one that many Nigerians will not be happy to see this morning. Cooking gas price hits 1,200 per kilogram.
Let the Nigerians breathe. What? So that means if I'm filling my 12 kg, it used to be 11,000 before.
So now you should be paying close about 17,000.
My goodness. Oh my goodness.
So imagine paying that and you're buying fuel for 560, 570.
So that's like 17,000 for. Then I'm buying fuel for typically I used to buy for 12,000 before, but now as at a few days ago I bought for 39,000. And it lasts me for 1 week. So literally, we're using all our salaries.
And the fuel doesn't last for 1 week anymore.
Because
the recent fuel that's being sold now at the filling stations. I bought yesterday full tank. Guess what? Before I came on my way to work this morning, it already left the F sign. I was screaming in the car. I was like a madman in the car. I was like, why? That's what I was saying. Why? Again, I noticed this last week. So when I saw the article that, the Pengerson is already complaining about the quality
of the
fuel that is being sold since the announcement, I quickly jumped in and said that's true. But then again, let's move on. Marketers blame supply disruption, say further hike likely. Aside from the 1,200 per kilogram, they said there will be a further hike. So take note. If I were you, I might try to fill up my gas, currently. Nigerians may resort to using firewood, experts says.
And then we're talking about, what they call it, renewable energy. We're talking about green energy. The world is tilting towards taking away these harmful sources of energy, So like cooking with coal and all these other things are not, they're harmful for the environment. Whilst the world is moving towards looking at sustainable, renewable energy, we are now going back. Because how can people eat? Even that firewood and coal, it's very expensive.
It is.
How are people going to feed?
Charcoal is expensive.
Joe, I don't think there's even any middle class in this Nigeria again. It seems like there's the rich and then there's the poor. Then they are the poorest of the poor.
Those poorest, like that guy sang. Anyway. I'm sorry, we're just trying to crack up a bit.
It's a Nigerian thing that we use humor to deflect our pain.
We don't feel, it's mental health day, so we just need to guide out. Sorry, we once again want to use the medium to apologize to those who are seeing these stories. I know it's going to affect your mental health.
No, let's even tell you what it is that we're doing. It's another mental health coping mechanism. It's, you're deflecting you're using laughter to deflect from your pain. Because by the time I think about this, whatever money you're paying for your family, you are going to have to up it every month.
Well, federal government working with NLNG to ramp up supply, according to official. Let's hope that works. Ahead of that, you could take a look at that big one. Tinubu's economic policy is going awry. Yes, Tinubu's economic policy is going awry. Financial Times says, ask president to stop announcing plans without implementation idea. I took my time to read this from the Financial Times, and I must say that they made some very, very key points that I think the president and, of course, his cabinet might want to really look at. One of the points they made was that don't be quick to make announcements of policies without having a proper implementation plan.
Is that not what happened
and
with
they
subsidies?
and they highlighted some key areas to that. One of it was the subsidy. Yes, they said regardless, and they went ahead to say the new CBN governor who's coming in will have no choice than to ramp up, of course, the interest rates. That's what's going to happen in few weeks from now. So they've already predicted it, and we wouldn't be shocked if that happens, because they said that's the only way that they can start creating a balance. But then again, they mentioned the other policies. Then they also mentioned the appointments, and they said don't be too quick. And I think that's what we've seen. We've seen the media aide, Ajuri Ngalale, who has come out to speak tough. Remember the Dubai issue?
Yes.
Oh, we're doing this, we're doing that, we've started this. I think it's something that they might want to, slow down a bit, read up, and see how you can get solutions rather than just making announcements. But then again, will Liberians elect another female president today? That's a question. Well, many have said they doubt. We had a guest who said Joseph Bukai seems to be...
have you seen that? Unfortunately, I don't think that we're very, very fair to women. So they will say, oh, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf did this and that. It's just one woman. So the time we allow the woman to do this, see what happened. And then there have been generations of men who continue to perpetrate corruption. Nobody bats an eyelid. They'll complain, they'll vote another man in. Anyway, I don't see a female getting in, unfortunately.
It's going to be tough, though. Security operatives kill 67 bandits, rescue 20 victims in Bauchi. Wow, that's another update. Well, that's all we can take on the front page of Daily Trust.
All right, now let's punch you with a Punch newspaper. And on the front page, federal government... Oh, wow. I didn't see this coming. Federal government denies subsidy return. More fuel stations shut.
By the way, let me also announce, Olive, sorry to jump in. We're going to have this discussion tomorrow, by the way, on Breakfast Central. However, yesterday I had to go to about 4 filling stations.
Me too.
They were all shut. Yes. And I said, what's going on? They said, we're not selling. I had to go somewhere else. In short, the way I reversed there, you would think just to get in there and just fill up my tank.
So the same thing happened. I bought for my car, but I had forgotten to buy for my generator. So I just thought, I'll buy from the filling station near the house. I got to the one near the house, short. I said, okay, let me go further down.
Shocking.
Short. I went to like 4 filling stations as well before I finally found one to buy fuel from. And when I bought it, I was just like, okay, something is going on. I didn't realize that it just looked weird. NNPCL blames pockets of fuel queues and road delays. 25 refinery licenses idle over subsidies, says Kyari. Slain lawyer, Lagos NBA welcomes death sentence for Kilakop. Yeah. A life for a life.
That's the law.
Yeah.
That's the law.
Domestic airlines demand jet fuel import license, Forex. Concerns as commercial sex workers invade Lagos malls and lure men.
Is it today? Is it today? Concerns.
Well,
they are also being beaten by the fuel subsidy.
Yes, everybody.
And the gas price.
Markets don't press everybody.
Things is pressing the neck.
Exactly.
So they have to think of strategies.
The unfortunate thing about headlines like this is that it makes certain organizations, right, treat women in a certain way. And I'll give you an example. I once went to a restaurant on the island and I was with a friend, a man. And as we were walking in, I noticed that they wouldn't let another woman walk in. So I stopped in my usual, women supporting women's self. And I asked him why he wouldn't let the woman in. The summary of it is that once you don't come in with a man to certain restaurants on the island, there's an assumption that you're a commercial sex worker coming to lure men, so they wouldn't let you in. So these headlines like this are quite, those are things that put people in trouble. Because I'm a corporate woman. On a Friday night, I may decide, you know what, today I want to let my hair down, wear a nice skimpy dress, and just want to hang around town. And then all of a sudden they will assume that I'm a commercial sex worker and wouldn't allow me access.
So let me
I
ask
have
you
a problem
question.
with that headline.
Sometimes these headlines
They are luring men.
spring from the fact that in most places you go to hang out, I mean, as a guy,
it's a man that wrote that headline. I have to go and check that story.
You find a woman sitting down buying one bottle of mineral and sipping it for 4 hours.
Is there a problem?
With asking for ice block.
So the man that they are luring is the animal that they are luring now. He doesn't have discipline. He doesn't have boundaries. He doesn't have self-control that they are saying a woman is luring him as per he's a baby now.
Maybe as she's sipping the drink, she's winking at the guy.
And the guy cannot look away.
The guy is saying this is too much.
I have a problem with that headline, and I'm sure it's a man that wrote it. I'll go and check the Punch newspaper. I'm sure it's a man. Anyway, let's move on. Aiyeda Tiwa drops suit against Ondo Assembly, Nakeredolu. At the top of the paper, we have Israel-Hamas conflict. Federal government warns pilgrims against illegal trips. Lagos suspends airlifting. I was thinking about this because for the longest time, I'd been wanting to, take, for those who are like Christians, you want to visit Israel, at some point you want to make the pilgrimage journey. And I just imagine people who went on a pilgrimage journey being trapped there in the midst of this conflict. It's just a really sad reality. Tough. And not just with Israel. In several parts of the country, of the continent, where you're thinking, the world rather, you're just thinking of, I have to be careful because you can travel and in Africa, for example, you travel and the coup will start while you're there. It's all over. It's all over. 310 pilgrims evacuated from Jordan. That toll nears 1,500. It's really sad and ridiculous what's happening there. Final story, 4 consortia to fix dilapidated pipelines. That's another just what we said. Just what the Financial Times said. When you speak, you have to have plans. You need to prove it. That's anyway. Let's go to the final paper for this morning, and the final paper is Daily Sun. Been a while though. Daily Sun, 20th anniversary. That's what they're celebrating. Congratulations. ASP gets death sentence for Christmas Day murder. Female lawyer. Can you imagine? Look at what's happening to me. Reading this headline, I'm having goosebumps again. You know why? Because I pass there frequently. Yes. And it could be anybody. I passed the Ajah one, that place where this woman was shot as well. You pass there, very frequently as well. And it really could have been anybody. It could have been anybody. And why I'm also having goosebumps is it just looked like it happened yesterday. Yeah. It's still fresh in the memory. And for the fact that she was pregnant and she was shot, so 2 lives were wasted and many other lives were affected. In short, so many. Anyway, we'll talk about that. That's one of our conversations for this hour. So we're having a guest join us. He's an expert when it comes to judicial matters. We'll talk about that. Nigeria to export fuel next year. Federal government. I'm sorry, guys, but while we're giggling, it still has to do with the same conversation we had from the Financial Times, that it's not just about putting the big headlines, because in the past 5 months, we've seen that the administration is so quick in making these huge statements, and yet there's nothing to back it up yet. So that's exactly why we're saying maybe we should start having a rethink before we throw them on the headlines or front page.
Let's move on. Kyari says removal of subsidy saved NNPC from bankruptcy. Let's take a look at other stories very quickly. Tinubu appoints 5 more presidential media advisory team. Atiku mocks. Page 8 has that story. So Atiku is basically laughing at the 5 more presidential media advisory team. But don't forget, this is the largest portfolio of appointments that we've seen.
It's like every
history
AK
of
market
Nigeria.
day, they're appointing somebody.
Yeah, and guess what? According to sources, it hasn't stopped. More to follow. So are we going to see 100-men cabinet team, be it from the SAs, SSAs, and the likes, down to, maybe a minister? While some are indeed celebrating that the ministerial list and appointees has indeed come a long way. For instance, you have an appointee in the aspect of what's it called again? Okay, you do have for tourism, which has been a long time coming. There's been a request, and many are excited about it. That portfolio is very necessary. You also have that of the waterways, the marine, and so on. But then again, you can read up. Let's wrap things up very quickly. I think we're done with the papers this morning. Church leaders charged Tinubu to end insecurity. That's one story to look at. 99,985 Nigerian students left for UK universities in 5 years, according to the government. That's close to about 100,000 persons who have vacated or have left the shores of Nigeria. But that's all that we're going to take on the front pages of the newspaper for this morning on a Tuesday morning. We've wrapped things up from Daily Trust, The Punch, Daily Sun, and of course, Guardian. We'll go for that break. When we come back, our top story focuses on that sad incident we just talked about and what the court has said, plus what you should know. Stay with us.
Africa is rising. Again, we hear our sounds echo on the other side. Afrobeat and Afropop reinvented, hip life brought back to life, new energy infused into Kwaito and Kwela. Africa is balling. Every stroke, every shot, every raise, we find our place at the top. Taking the helm of real power, new hopes for democracies. A breed of entrepreneurial tigers, audacious storytellers, and a promising generation raring to go. Truly, Africa is rising. And this is where the stories that define our continent live.
Welcome back to Breakfast Central. The Lagos State High Court, sitting at the Tafawa Balewa Square Annex, Igboshere, Lagos Island, has convicted and sentenced to death by hanging a suspended Assistant Superintendent of Police ASP, Drambi Vandi, for the murder of Lagos-based lawyer Mrs. Omobolanle Rahim. Justice Ibironke Harrison held that the prosecution, the Lagos State government, proved the case against the convict beyond all reasonable doubt. Recall that back on January 16, the Lagos State government arraigned Vandi before the court for shooting to death the 41-year-old pregnant lawyer at the Ajah Underbridge checkpoint on December 25, 2022.
The convict faced a one-count charge of murder, contrary to Section 223 of the Criminal Law of Lagos State 2015. Let's now bring in constitutional lawyer and public affairs analyst Barrister Jide Ologu. Thank you so much for taking time out to join us this morning on Breakfast Central as we talk through this recent happening.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be with you.
All right. So first of all, I mean, you're not just a constitutional lawyer. We're going to look at things from the aspect of that. You're also a public affairs analyst. One question I like to ask is this: how does this news, especially when it broke yesterday, how does it affect the environment, the people? And since we're talking about mental health as well, how does it affect the mental health, especially of Nigerians and police officers altogether?
Absolutely. It's a great relief to many, particularly those who are with cold feet concerning getting justice from the judiciary. And this is one of the celebrated cases in Nigeria. And again, the Nigerian Bar Association showed keen interest in the matter, and also for the generality of the citizens who have the perception of extrajudicial killings and oppression, brutality from the police. I think this is a judgment that has come to punctuate the fact that Nigeria deserves orderliness and that there are consequences, because that is very important. I should let us know that this judgment is one of the very few. I doubt if police officer has been handed over this level of judgment. So it appears that in the past, police officers have gotten away with some of these extrajudicial practices. So this is a great, and when you talk about the mental impact, the impact of mental health, those who have been traumatized by that experience. Personally, when I drive through that Aja Bridge axis, I recall this incident, particularly that it happened on Christmas Day, a day that should be a day of joy, and that she was pregnant. So right now, I think many Nigerians will feel a sense of relief and then justice.
Justice has been served in this case, but I think another factor, like you did say, it's not common sight. It's not common to see that a police officer is being sentenced to death. And we must applaud the role that the NBA has played in ensuring that justice, is brought to Omobolale Rahim. Let's talk about what the next steps are. Now, the judge has handed over the verdict. The man has the right of appeal. And according to Amnesty International, we have about 3,000 people who are currently on death row. So how do you see this turning out? Do you think that he would appeal this? And how long, usually, give us an insight into how long people can stay on death row before the judgment is actually executed?
As we speak, in year 2020 alone, at least 58 death sentences were pronounced in Nigeria. And if you talk about death sentence, it's allowed under Section 33 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended. But how many governors have been bold enough? I think just about 2 have been signed in recent years, because when you talk about death sentences, if it is not appealed, the execution will have to be signed by the state governors. And as I mentioned earlier, I think only 2 warrants for death sentences were carried out since 1999. So you can imagine, because some of these governors will come out to feel that, I don't want the blood of anyone on my neck. So you find many who have been convicted to death by hanging or otherwise, still in the correctional facility for years, waiting for the final day. But like you rightly mentioned, Bandi has a right to appeal. And at this level, the Supreme Court remains the highest court in the land since 1963 when we became a republic. And I expect that the lawyers, we appeal. But let's also come up with some constitutional facts. If you look at Section 33 of our Constitution 1999 as amended, it says every person has a right to life, and no one shall be deprived intentionally of his life, save in execution of the sentence of a court in respect of a criminal offense of which he has been found guilty in Nigeria, like the case of Bandi, and we have the case of the Chief Judge of Osun State sentencing Rahman Adedoyin, owner of Hilton Hotel in Ilefe, to death by hanging over the murder of Timothy Adeboki, postgraduate student of the Babylon University, late. And again, having said that, Bandi pleaded not guilty. And according to Section 36 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended, he has a right to fair hearing, because it says a person shall be entitled to a fair hearing within a reasonable time by a court or other tribunal established by law and constituted in such manner as to ensure its independence and impartiality. And we also have what we call presumption of innocence until pronounced guilty by the court. Honorable Justice Ibironke Harrison. Bandi was presumed to be innocent, but the case has been proved beyond all reasonable doubt. And if you look at Section 131 of the Evidence Act of Nigeria 2011, it says that he who alleges must prove. And in the course of this case, there was a witness who confirmed that the police pulled the trigger fast, so that he was trying to say it was true, this banger or whatever. So if he actually committed murder, then he should be liable to the penalty. Because when you look at the criminal law in Nigeria in the last 53 years, death penalty has frequently been imposed on offenses of murder and treason. And this is a strong message to other officials of the government who are expected to be accountable to the citizen. We look at Section 14 of Section 2 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended. It stipulates that the security and the welfare of the citizen shall be the primary purpose of government. So if you are representing the citizen, the government rather, in carrying out some roles, and you are answerable to the citizens, because the same Constitution says that sovereignty belongs to the people, and it's from the people that the government gets the authority to govern. So these are all the issues. So I expect that the Nigerian police that has the vision of creating a safe environment for economic development and economic growth, we carry out this message and begin to engage the officers at the level of trainings on attitude, mindset, and ethical approaches to handling matters. I mean, if this person did not stop at the checkpoint, you do not have the right to kill her. The best you can do is probably capture the picture of the plate number, and you go to the registration officials. Agencies can interrelate to implement laws and trace, like it's done abroad. Even though globally we have police brutality, I can also say this, that we have very refined and wonderful police officers, but the mandate is on the police force to ensure that the public relations reputational gap is breached, because the mantra is that police is the friend of the people.
All right.
That should manifest the way they exercise their authority.
I'd like to touch on something, the abolition of death penalty, and that's of course because you did mention that since 2020 we've had only 2 governors that have signed the death penalty, because a number of them don't want the blood on their hands. So we have a number, I did mention earlier that we have over 3,000 people on death row according to Amnesty International. There have been global calls. United Nations experts have called for the abolition of death penalty, and they've been asking that this be made complete and final around the world. We've seen some advancements in states like, I think in countries like Ghana and I think Zambia, I'm not quite sure now, that have abolished death penalty through legislative leadership. Do you see that this is a movement that will hold water, or an advocacy that would be able to hold water in Nigeria, especially because, like you said, a number of these governors don't want blood on their hands?
You know, I did the research on that, and globally, Nigeria is one of the few countries that still embrace capital punishments. You know, many nations are moving away from it, considering fundamental human rights. And the big question is that, has death penalty, capital punishment, has it been able to help the society from curtailing this crime? And the answer may be no. I had the privilege of reviewing the kidnapping prohibition law of Lagos State 2017 during the tenure of Governor Ambode. And I raised an issue. You see, these kidnappers are not scared about death penalty. I recall when you talk about this capital punishment for some offenses, for instance, maybe armed robbery, it came up as early as the 70s, early 70s. Have we stopped armed robbery?
No.
Crime is a human issue, and there are other factors that can help you curtail crime. You can go and study the template in Norway, the template in Sweden, the template in Switzerland, the template in China, Japan, as other countries where they have been able to, minimize crime. There is hardly a society you can find that is free of crime, but you can reduce crime. And that is what we should be focusing on. It's just like when you are applying palliative measures to substantial issues. So how can we have a society where people can be friendly, where people can be contented, and know that they are rendering service to the citizens, and know that the authority they have should be for their selfish purposes, and if you don't dance their tunes, they wipe you off. So we should go to the macro level. How can we have a society that the economy is vibrant? If you see some of the countries I have mentioned, there are countries that are doing very well. You talk about Singapore and some other countries like that. So how can we lift up our nation? You cannot have a nation where about 133 million citizens are within the poverty window, multifaceted for that matter, and you want that society to be secured. No. It should be a difficult task. So we still have a long way to go beyond all these penalties. Like I said, in year 2020 alone, 3 years ago, at least 58 death sentences were pronounced in Nigeria. And this is a country that has 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory. So if these penalties can help us, by now we should not be talking about kidnapping, killings, and different kinds of. And the case of Bolanle came up because, she was a prominent citizen. And what about many other cases, extrajudicial killings and things like that? So I want to say that the basic assignment of the government, when you talk about security and welfare, you can see that they are symbiotic, they are tied together. Where you have commendable welfare attention given to the citizens to help you deal with crime. But when you don't have a commendable welfare attention to your citizens, then you may be wondering how an eagle will fly with just one wing. The eagle needs two wings to fly. And so we have the wing of security and welfare. And if you ignore welfare, you're not likely to secure the land. So these are issues of our time. These are issues of our time.
We do hope that it's not just one of those conversations that we never hear about. We hope that this sort of sets the standard and in a way deters further policemen from enforcing brutality on civilians. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. And we do hope that the family of Omobolanle Rahim can find some measure of peace. Nothing will ever be good enough because, it's not bringing her back. But I hope that they can find some measure of peace. Thank you for your time with us this morning.
Absolutely. My condolences once again to the family, to the nation Nigeria. And we pray that by the special grace of God and the act of man, that will make this nation better and allow God to restore his glory upon the land. God bless Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your
Thank
time
you.
with us.
Thank you for joining us.
Right.
All right, so let's move away from that conversation to another one. Well, Tuesday, that's today, 10th of October 2023, marks World Mental Health Day, a day that is marked to raise awareness and mobilize support for people that are affected by mental health issues due to armed conflicts. Now, the day equally provides opportunity for stakeholders to discuss available needs and best practices in addressing mental health issues. Well, according to the WHO, that's the World Health Organization, global prevalence of mental disorder increases to 22.1% in conflict situation as against 10.6% prevalence in populations that are not affected by conflicts. Take note, conflicts.
In Nigeria's northeast, due to the conflict, hundreds have been killed, millions displaced, and on the run to safety, while other households have been separated with their loved ones. Hundreds of thousands who were hitherto living a normal life have been left with no means of survival but a complete dependence on humanitarian aid. And this has put them in a dire situation, increased poverty, hunger and disease, vulnerability, abuses, and consequently, psychological trauma. Joining us this morning is Rita Umaru Akoji, psychologist at the International Committee for the Red Cross ICRC Abuja. Good morning and thank you very much for joining us. Can you please unmute your device? And let's get into the conversation. All right, as we talk about mental, thank you very much for joining us. As we talk about Mental Health Day, many people do not understand what exactly we're talking about. So give us an idea, especially from your perspective, with the work that you do on the front lines, how important mental health is.
Okay, so good morning, everyone, and it's a great pleasure for me to be here. So mental health is very important to human life. Mental health is defined as an individual's ability to work productively in the society, to contribute to his community, to cope with the normal stresses of life, and just to flourish in their environment. Now, an individual's inability to do that would place them at risk, or it would make them to live a life that is not optimal. Yeah. So in the northeast of Nigeria and following the conflict that has happened, people's abilities to function in their daily lives have been severely affected, and these continue to impact their ability to live their daily lives. So the ICRC is working to help these people in different programs to be able to support them so that they return back to optimal living.
All right, so earlier on in the first hour, we had spoken to also a mental health advocate and a DG, talking about Joseph Oike, and he broke it down, especially looking at not just the north. He mentioned that there's also mental cases in the southeast. Let's just put it in general terms. The global, the world, Nigeria as a whole. And we do know that you are doing more, especially the ICRC, to ensure that they bring succor to those who are indeed facing this. But can you let us into some of the things that is being done so that those who go through these mental health challenges can indeed get some form of help?
Okay. So in the northeast of Nigeria, the International Committee of the Red Cross has partnerships with some important organizations. Key among them is the Nigerian Red Cross Society, and we also have partnerships with the Ministry of Health and the primary healthcare development agencies to be able to train or build the capacities of these partners so that they can provide services to those who are affected. So they provide these services through different programs. So we have persons affected by violence at community level. So in communities, we provide services. In health facilities, we provide services. This includes primary healthcare centers and major referral hospitals in the cities. And then we also provide support, mental health support to families of missing persons, and then to helpers who have frontline positions. We also provide mental health and psychosocial support to people who have physical disabilities. So in terms of the services that we provide, we have ranging from individual to group to family support, and then awareness raising is another key activity that we implement in the northeast of Nigeria. And this is because we've realized in the course of our work that awareness on mental health issues are quite limited. So it's good for us to take up this this avenue to be able to increase awareness of people about the mental health consequences that could arise from armed conflict and violence, and then also to raise awareness about the services that exist so that people can access and utilize these services.
So much for sharing the work that the ICRC is doing to help propagate the gospel of mental health and to ensure that more people access it. But I want you to, maybe in a few seconds, just give us an idea of how badly, I mean, the ICRC majorly attends to a number of people, and the work you do with the Red Cross attends to people on the front lines. How does this mental health affect them? We watch in movies and we're seeing, you know, post-traumatic stress disorder. Give us a picture of exactly how their mental health is being affected.
Okay, so following displacement, there's many things that, should I say, reactions that people come down with. So it's people not being able to sleep. It's people getting very afraid over very little things. So having like an exaggerated startled response, something that's really little agitates you. There are people who continue to think about the difficulties that they have faced. They're not able to focus on other things. There's people who continually cry, so you have low mood all of the time, and people are really anxious. It's many different things that we see. This gives birth to conflicts in families. People are not able to communicate properly because every individual is dealing with their own difficulties, and to be able to find a middle ground now becomes difficult in the family. We see practical problems. People are not able to meet basic needs, and these also affect emotions very seriously. We see a lot of anger, we see frustration, we see many different effects. This is just to mention a few.
I mean, I like the fact that you brought it back home. You talked about families and so on. And I think there's a lot of work to be done in that area, in that regard. I don't know if you joined us in taking a look at the front pages this morning. The price of gas has gone up. The cost of living is high. I mean, you're a Nigerian, regardless of where you live, and you're equally feeling the impact. We want you to use this few minutes to help us. What advice would you give everyone, people, to ensure that they maintain their mental well-being in the face of economic uncertainty, especially now that the prices of food, accommodation, and the likes are indeed going up?
Okay, so this is the time that is very important for people to tap into their inner resources to be able to cope with the difficulties that we face. And this is not in any way disregarding the difficulties, the very genuine difficulties that we all face as Nigerians because of the situations that we find ourselves in. So this is the time to limit sometimes your exposure to media, because sometimes over consuming media can expose you to a lot of fear. You come down with anxiety and so many things. Anger, frustration, they come from listening to how dire the situation could be. So in the interest of your well-being, limit your consumption of news and media. Not to, we appreciate the work that you do, but just limit a bit so that
I was wondering exactly.
You can also function properly.
How exactly are we meant to limit the consumption of news media? Because we do this every day.
So it's an individual case-by-case assessment. So if you see that you're really getting bothered by the things that you hear on media, maybe you should take a step back and not focus on that at the moment.
And I shall
take
cut
a
out
step
this
back
clip.
and leave it. Yeah.
I'll cut out this clip and send to our HR so that when I need to take breaks, they would understand that the news has been getting to me, and I certainly need mental health breaks. Because it's very important. We talk about mental health for everybody, but we don't talk about how it affects journalists. And I remember during COVID was my first major encounter with depression during the the onset of COVID-19. So thank you so much for joining us. All right, go ahead.
So in addition, this is also the time to tap into inner resources, like I said earlier. So the things that you find very enjoyable, the things that help to replenish you and reinvigorate you are the things you should focus on. So if, for example, you're someone who enjoys physical activity, this is the time to also move a bit your body and get those hormones that would make you feel better come up. This is also the time to focus on looking after yourself. Prioritize rest and sleep. If you're having difficulties with sleep, this is the time to also reflect, pay attention to this, and take some sleep promotion tips, put them into practice, and see how you can get better rest. Also focus on social relationships and social connections, draw strength from the people around you, and just these kinds of things that would help you feel better in a time like this. There are those who do well when they focus on intellectual pursuits. So if it's schooling, if it's gaining new skills or learning something new that would help you feel better, this would be the time to lean into this. And then also finding meaning in life. There are those who feel very comfortable tapping more into the things that connect them to their purpose, so to speak. So serving, being of service to people, just giving something if you can. And this might not be money because we're talking about difficult financial times, right? So I'm talking about maybe offering a service, just helping somebody in need around you, these kinds of things.
Thank you so much, Ruth Umaru Akoji, psychologist, ICRC Abuja. Thank you for joining us. And I'm sure those tips will go a long way for all our viewers, and especially for those of us here as well. I'm sure we didn't pay for consultancy, right? Thank you. Thank you for joining us, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, it's been a long conversation, Olive, and one of the points that we've mentioned is there is also mental health for journalists. And I do recall last year that was also a very important topic as well, and still is and will continue to be, because most times the journalists are at the forefront. I mean, take a look at the war that's ongoing, the Israeli-Palestine war. You would find the journalists in the middle of that war, trying to save their lives, run around and so on. So many people think until you are at the forefront of the incidences or the circumstances or the war, so to say, in quotes, that's where you need to ensure that your mental health is well taken care of. But regardless of that, we journalists also have to read a lot. So you have to take in so many things.
So much information that you really don't want to take
And some of these informations are not what your body or your mind truly needs.
I want to talk about something, though, that is not an angle that people pay a lot of attention to. And this is not for journalists, this is for everybody. So everything might even be working well in your life. You might have your job going on well. You might have your finances in order, your marriage or your love life in order, but you're still depressed. So it's a possibility. And, that's, of course, clinical depression. So it doesn't always have to have a reason that, it is because life is hard. It's because this is what I'm going through. Because I eat 3
square meal a day.
Yes, I don't have money for 3 square meal because my career is not advancing. If you notice, and I'm not saying this as an expert, I'm saying this as someone who has done a lot of research on mental health work and spoken to a lot of, people who are experts in the field. If you notice that there's been a lingering sadness for more than 2 weeks, please see an expert, get help. Talk to somebody. It's very, very important, because people who end up committing suicide, it doesn't start in one day. It's over time. It starts to eat at the fabrics of your mental well-being. At the moment, you also notice that you're nursing suicidal thoughts. Not like you're even saying you want to harm yourself. Like you're just flirting with the idea that, what would it be like? That's already a red flag that should let you know that you need to see a specialist. The little ways in which you can help to protect your mental health, for me, I see a therapist. I go to the spa. When I'm stressed, I like going to the spa. And sometimes I just turn off my phone and just allow myself listen to music and breathe at home. The phone has so much pressure. Social media, so much pressure. So please, protect your mental health, whatever you need to do today. And we hope that we can have more conversations about this and people can be more open about their journey with mental health.
Absolutely. Well, we'd like to go on and on and on. We've been able to bring to you some of the biggest stories right from the start of this show. We talked about mental health. We talked about the appointment, and so on and so forth. Well, let's let you in on what's coming on later today here on News Central.
At 2 p.m. West African time, we have Village Square Africa.
Of course, at 5 p.m., it's one slot West African time, by the way.
And at 9 p.m. West African time, NC Continental Prime. As we wrap up the conversation this morning, we would like to, with sad hearts, announce that we lost one of our own, our technical director, Catherine Acholo, who was someone that has been a part of our journey here on Breakfast Central. Every morning, she's speaking to us in our ears and helping the show move smoothly. Catherine will be missed direly, sorely by everyone. The whole New Central team is mourning, and we want to extend our condolences to her family and friends and all those who are mourning. May your light never go out. And it's on that sad note that we wrap up the show this morning. We'll see you again same time tomorrow. I'm Olive Emodi.
And I'm Joe Hansen. Do have a great day.
Bye-bye.